We left Seabrook Marina on Tuesday, February 23rd, heading south towards Galveston Bay, down through the Houston Shipping Channel and towards Galveston proper. Our depth meter when we left the marina was reading about 3.5 feet, and we're not really sure where our depth meter reads from the top of the waterline or the bottom of the keel. And our draw on the boat, or how deep we are, is about 5.5 feet. So it's something that we have to be really aware of as we progress through this trip here. As we left the marina for our final time, we went over towards the fuel docks there at Kemah and topped off. We did have 3 external tanks with us, so we topped off on about 17 gallons of fuel in the boat, and then we added 15 additional gallons of external fuel, just to make sure that we weren't going to have any issues as we started this trip, since we knew we were going to be motoring well over 350 miles. Getting fuel for the boat is very similar to getting fuel for your car. You have to know what side your fuel tank is on and know what type of fuel you're going to put in. So here I am pointing to Travis that first one is diesel. That second tank there is gas, so we need to put the diesel in. Luckily, this nice gentleman comes out and helps us catch the boat. We tie the boat up and make sure everything's secure, and then we can go ahead and top off with any fuel. Now, we do have those deck ports on top of our deck, so that you unscrew one of those, and then that's where the fuel goes. We also have a vent inside the cockpit, inside of a small little cabinet that we have in there, and that makes sure that instead of the fuel filling up to the top of the fuel tank, it comes out that little vent. So we use these absorbing pads that I have in my hand, and you can see that I'm gonna make sure that there's no fuel on top of the deck of the boat, and then also there's one over in that little cabinet, so that when the fuel does get too much, it spits out into that vent, and then we catch it with that absorbing pad. So once we get done with all of the fueling and everything's taken care of with that, we'll start cleaning up the deck a little bit, move forward to make sure all the lines are secure. We don't want any lines dragging in the water since we're using the motor. We don't want our fenders hanging off the side either. Nobody likes a sailboat with fenders hanging out into the water. But it's also important that we have a clean deck, so in case we need to move forward at any time to take care of any issues that arise. We're also getting ready to go under the Kemah Bridge. It spans from Seabrook over to Kemah. Lots of construction in this area as they're rebuilding that bridge right now, so you might see some of that coming up in the video. Once we head out towards the Kemah Boardwalk, then we kind of make a right heading down south towards Galveston, and we get an opportunity to take the sail cover off and get a little sail in before we start the long motoring adventure. We got out past Kemah Boardwalk and realized that the wind was going to be in our favor. So we went ahead and unfurled the head sail, which is that front jib or genoa, depending on the size of it. And then we realized that the weather was actually going to be pretty nice for us to raise the mainsail as well. So here Travis is taking off the sail cover, and then we're going to raise the mainsail so that we can get an even better sail in for us. We had taken our sailing lessons in this area about 2.5 years ago, so we were familiar with the amount of large ships that we would see in the Houston Shipping Channel. So this is just an example of one of the large ships. This one actually looks pretty empty compared to some of the other ones, but the size of the ship can be intimidating. So we stayed just outside of the Houston Shipping Channel as we're going from Kemah down to Galveston. But you can see the size of this boat is pretty big, and they do have the right of way because they're huge, and we let them go wherever they want to go. So we knew there was going to be a lot of firsts for us on this trip, and here we are getting ready to set our anchor for the first time for an overnight anchorage. We'd set our anchor one time out in California where we just dropped it, ate lunch, picked it up, and then continued on with our sail. So this is the first time that we're actually going to drop the anchor and then hang out on the boat for a really long time and then sleep while the anchor is doing its job. We have a really great anchor. We've got a spade anchor, and it holds really, really well. The first couple times that we did it, you're very cautious, you're very concerned. Are you going to drag anchor? Is the boat going to move? But we really kind of figured out the best way to do it, and communication seems to be really, really important for us. So here, Travis is setting up the snubber. So the snubber is just 2 lines with this metal device in the middle that he's going to wrap around the anchor chain, and that snubber is going to take the weight of the anchor off of the front of the boat, so that as the boat moves, and if the anchor were to move, it's causing that weight to be on the snubber and not on the boat itself. So it will shouldn't cause it any damage. So here we are, we're trying to we're kind of doing donuts out here, and we're going to try and find the place where we're going to drop the anchor. Here in a moment, we'll face into the wind and then drop the anchor, and then let the boat do what it's going to do and set everything up. So Travis is setting up the anchor now. We get to a point where we realize that the anchor chain is kind of tangled down below. He's pulling on it pretty hard, and he ends up having to go down below and fix that before we were able to set it properly. So a little bit of a frustration, but we were able to get it done, and then we didn't have any problems with it the rest of the time. So quiet night on anchor for that first night. All right, our first attempt at pulling up the anchor that's been set all night long. The chain is going that way? Okay. And are you ready for this? No, I mean, are you ready to go right now? Okay. So our boat has a windlass on it, and a windlass is kind of a motor up front near the anchor that you can connect the anchor chain to, and it basically just brings that anchor chain in. So it's moving the boat forward towards where the anchor is at. We only really used it this one day, and then after that, Travis was able just to kind of strong arm and pull us towards the anchor, and then once you get to a certain point, the anchor breaks free. Now our windlass has got a little button that you push on it. You're supposed to be able to stand and push it down, but ours is kind of finicky. So here he was kneeling down and doing it that way. Now he's giving me instructions on where to go and if I needed to move forward in the boat. Just put it forward a little bit, and then the forward momentum gets us to the point where that anchor breaks free. You can see here that Travis is using a bucket of water that he throws over the side of the boat to get cleaner water to clean off that anchor and the anchor chain. Now the anchor chain is called rode, and our boat, we've got about 350 feet of chain rode, and then we've got an additional 150 feet of rope rode. And that's just what ties the anchor to the boat. So how an anchor works is when you get to the location that you want to be, and you release that anchor down into the water, the pointy part of the anchor sits in the seabed, and in this case it's just mud, and so that's why it's important that we clean as much of it up as we can. So you clean up that mud, but the pointy part of the anchor gets into the mud, and then the wind pushes your boat backwards. The nose of your boat should be facing into the wind when you try to set your anchor, so that the wind will push your boat backwards, and what it's doing is it's just providing some tension on the front of that anchor, and then you release your rode into the water as well. Now the rode is going to be on a predetermined scope. So in this case, we were only using a 5-to-1 scope, but we could also use a 7-to-1. So 5 times however deep the water is, and then 7 times however deep the water is. So in this case, we're in about 10 feet of water. And then we also have to take into consideration the distance from the anchor to the water, from the bowsprit to the water as well. So we put out about 60, 65 feet of anchor. Now, I'm sorry, of road. And our chain has color coordinated links on it, so we know how far out it's gone. It's marked every 50 yards or 25 yards. And so Travis is able to determine the day before when we set the anchor how much anchor he was putting out. Here he's just giving me hand signals to let me know where to move the boat to. Again, this is the first time using it, and we are using the windlass up front. But it's important that you keep that chain clean, because you just don't want all that gunk down inside of your anchor down there, your anchor locker. Motor sailing along the ICW at about 5 knots. We started out, it was kind of sketchy. It was not going that fast at all. And the app that Travis uses was saying that we would be there by 9 p.m. And we knew it was going to be a long day, but
That's ridiculous.
That's ridiculous. So here's some Texas wildlife for you. Birds and cows. Up over there. But yeah, we're cruising along pretty good now. So we've got the Genoa up, the jib, the head sail, and we're just cruising along. Thankfully, it's not been super busy in the channel. We did pass a bunch of tugs and like all the fishing and shrimping boats, but they were all still at the dock, so you know, we're just cruising along. There's really nobody else but us. And we've heard that before, that coming down the ICW that there will be, oh, there was just something huge right there. That was a big old fish. But we've heard that there would be very few pleasure craft in the ICW, that you might see one or two. So yeah, we're doing great. Got some warm coffee or some hot coffee, and just kind of enjoying. We're still in Texas. We'll be in Texas for forever, it seems. We're probably going to be in Texas for a total of 12 or 13 hours of motoring. So here we go. What you doing?
Eating breakfast.
I was gonna make hot oatmeal for breakfast this morning in the Hot Logic Mini, but we realized that our handheld battery was dead, or not battery, or like our walkie-talkie, I keep calling it, our VHF handheld, which we have up in the cockpit, which makes it super easy and convenient, but the battery was going dead pretty fast. So we only have one DC plug-in down below. Right now the battery, the radio's plugged into that, charging that battery. When it's not plugged in,
then the Dometic refrigerator is plugged in. So, you know, we can only have one thing plugged in at a time in that. So that's what's plugged in now. And so I wasn't able to use the Hot Logic, which is fine. Travis ended up making a nice, good hot meal for us for breakfast. It's just a little cool out today. So that warm breakfast was nice. It's also 11 o'clock, so it's more like brunch, but we don't really eat breakfast anyway. So, but we're cruising right along, doing about 4.7 knots now. The wind has kind of shifted, so we can probably tighten up the sails a little bit and then get a little bit more oomph out of her. Travis was down below cooking, and I said to him, hey, the Coast Guard's slowly approaching. They were coming at us pretty fast, and then they slowed down. And we had been told that sometimes they'll board you in this, not necessarily in this area, but on the ICW, they'll board you and make sure that you have everything that you need for Coast Guard required equipment, like fire extinguishers and noisemaker and PFDs, personal flotation devices. So they were slowing down, and I kind of thought they were going to, you know, ask permission for us to stop or whatever. And maybe it's because we have the sail up. Maybe they were actually doing something else, but they didn't board us. They went to a buoy that was right by us, and then behind us came a big power boat. So I thought, oh, they're going to board that power boat, and then they didn't do that either. So I don't know what they were doing. One guy had a hard hat on, so maybe they were doing buoy work. It's you know, not ideal weather, but it's not raining on us yet. So we're just trucking along.